Hello and welcome to Filling the Sink, a podcast from Catalan News. My name's Lorcan Doherty and today we're talking about Spain's bold new plan to regularise 500,000 migrants. At a time when immigration is a political flashpoint across much of Europe and beyond, Spain appears to be taking a different approach. Around 500,000 undocumented migrants, including up to 150,000 in Catalonia, are set to benefit from the extraordinary regularisation announced by the Spanish government. But why now, and how will it actually work? We'll hopefully answer those questions and more on today's podcast. We've got an interview with Blanca Garcés from the Barcelona Centre for International Affairs coming up. And I'm joined today by Cillian Shields. Hello, Cillian.
Lorcan, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Regularisation of migrants. It's a bit of a mouthful for me to say. Well, let's see if we can get through this podcast.
Been having some difficulty, yeah.
What does it actually mean?
So what it means is essentially granting legal status to people who are already in the country and who don't have it. So it lets them live here and work here legally. In this case, this extraordinary regularisation process announced by Spain offers migrants currently living with an irregular legal status provisional residence and work authorization for an initial period of 1 year. After that time, beneficiaries can transition to standard residence permits under Spain's immigration law. Now, it's not to be confused with obtaining Spanish nationality. It's just regularizing the legal status of people already living here.
Okay, and we're journalists, Cillian, we're pretty up to date with what's going on, but this kind of was announced somewhat out of the blue, I would say, just at the end of January.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the move was presented by the Spanish government in a way, basically just to recognise the rights of people who are already here, already living here. So it was interesting that it was authorised through a royal decree, which means it's just the Spanish government's unilateral decision to go ahead with this move, as opposed to going through Congress like the way a law would. In that case, that would be debated on by opposition parties and ultimately it would have to be voted on also. And it didn't go through there, also partially because the Spanish government don't have a majority, which means the chances of success would be pretty slim, to be perfectly honest.
Yes.
Interestingly, also, this process came from a citizen-led initiative that actually gathered the signatures of over 700,000 people.
Spanish and Catalan ministers have highlighted that irregular migrants are already working in essential sectors such as agriculture, care services, hospitality and cleaning, contributing to the economy while lacking full legal protection. That's their justification for it. It's opposition parties have said this could act as a call to attract more migrants, but the government says no, it's for people that are already here. And at the time of recording, Cillian, this process is just about to begin.
Yes, exactly. It's due to open in April 2026, so next month. And it's going to remain open for 3 months, so the end of June 2026 as well. And you just mentioned there that it's not meant to be a call for people to come to the country. It's made for people who are already living here. So applicants, they have to have lived in Spain continuously for at least 5 months before the end of December last year.
Okay, and then there's another category, isn't there? People who have applied for international protection, essentially asylum seekers. They can also apply, provided that their application for asylum was submitted before December 31st, 2025. Now, in this case, the 5-month stipulation doesn't apply.
Yeah, exactly. And another important thing is that all applicants must have a clean criminal record, both in Spain and abroad.
Okay. The process also covers migrants' children under 18 already living in Spain, and these minors will receive a residence permit valid for 5 years. So the standard one is for 1 year, and with children, it's going to be 5 years. So, Cillian, how is this process going to work then?
Yeah, so applicants can submit forms online or possibly in person as well. There's some reports this week that there's going to be desks open up in post offices and social security offices to receive applications. But also people have to submit proof of residency. This could be a municipal registration certificate, which locally is called the empadronamiento, or it could also include medical records, utility bills, or even money transfer receipts would also be valid.
Okay, and the government has set a 3-month deadline to process each application from the moment it is admitted for consideration. Now, in terms of numbers, Cillian, I mentioned at the top of the podcast that the Spanish government expects 500,000 migrants across Spain to benefit from this.
Yeah, precisely. That's their calculation that's the number of people that they believe are living and working in Spain in irregular situations, don't have the proper documentation, and who would also meet the requirements to formalise their stay in the country. However, there are other sources, such as the FUNCAS think tank, that is dedicated to economic and social research, that they place this number much higher. They believe that around 840,000 people could benefit from this extraordinary regularisation process. And there's also, I read this week, Policía Nacional, Spain's national police force. They have a report that estimates that between 1 and maybe even up to 1.3 million people could apply for it.
And then in Catalonia, we've seen figures from 120,000 to 150,000, but those based on the Spanish government's 500,000 estimate. So it remains to be seen what numbers will avail of this opportunity to regularise their status.
We should point out too that there's not actually a limit on the amount of people who will get to benefit from this. The 500,000 number is the Spanish government's estimate, but if there are 800,000, if there are 1 million people who are eligible, who meet all the requirements, there's no limit, there's no cap for real on this.
And Cillian, this is called an extraordinary regularisation process. This is opposed to an ordinary one, isn't it?
Precisely, yeah.
Has something like this happened before, though?
Yes, it has, of course. Although, interestingly, this is the first time since 2005 that Spain have undertaken it. Back then, 576,000 people benefited, and that was the largest one to date. Obviously, this next one could be just as large. It could be slightly under. It could be over. But it's the seventh one that Spain has undertaken since the return to democracy. And according to the Spanish government, there have also been around 40 of these processes across the European Union since the 1990s.
To find out more, I spoke to Blanca Garcés, a senior researcher at the Barcelona Centre for International Affairs. Her research focuses on the study of migration policies, including borders, the legal construction of irregularity, labour migration, asylum, reception and social inclusion. Here is Blanca Garcés.
I would say that Spanish migration policies have always relied on regularizations. We had several regularization programs in the early 2000s, in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2005. And since 2005, in Spain, we have an individual regularization mechanism, which is called arraigo.
Compared to other regularisation campaigns or the arraigo procedure, the latest plan has two key differences.
First of all, it's the result of a campaign organized by immigrant communities. It started during the pandemic. They argued that many regular migrants were essential workers and were the workers that were working for us while most of the population was in lockdown. And they succeeded to gather more than 700,000 signatures, which were presented in the Spanish Parliament. We call it ILP, Popular Legislative Initiative, which was presented in Parliament. It's the biggest one in the Spanish history, let's say. And then another big difference with all regularizations that we have had in Spain up to now is that this time, this job offer is not needed, which means that it's a regularization of residents, of irregular residents in Spain, and not a regularization of workers. So you don't need to prove that you have a job offer, which is also quite new because in the past, in 2005, many regularized migrants lost their residence permit after a year in the moment of renewal because they did not have a formal job. So let's say that this time is more inclusive. Many more people will be able to regularize.
In Catalonia, Blanca explains, one of the main sectors that will benefit from this regularisation is the care sector.
And here, the employers are not employers in the more common sense, but are middle-class families who employ migrants, particularly migrant women, to take care of their children or of their elderly. These women will be recognized and their work may be then recognized. At the same time, it's true that you may have a residence permit and yet not have a proper labor contract. So let's see whether those women working for families on an irregular basis, once they get a residence permit, will be offered the job offer, the labor contract that they deserve, and not only deserve, but that the law determines.
Another sector that will be impacted is the hospitality sector, very much linked to the tourist sector.
And of course, Catalonia is a tourist destination, which means that we have many, many hotels and many, many restaurants. And migrant workers are particularly dominant in these sectors. So this will facilitate that employers in these sectors get access to migrant workers with a residence permit and therefore with a possibility to be formally employed.
And looking beyond this extraordinary regularisation, what does the future hold?
If the government changes, and also in a context more and more determined by the discourses of the extreme right, I'm not sure whether in 2-3 years we will still have the arraigo, at least as we have it now. We probably will shift towards a much more restrictive and exclusionary policy in line with the migration policies we see in most European countries. We will probably be creating spaces of extreme vulnerability and exclusion, like for instance in the US, where we have millions of irregular migrants living and working there for years and years without the fundamental rights recognized. But again, at the end, and this is explained very well by Hein de Haas, who is a Dutch sociologist who wrote a book called How Migration Really Works. What he says is that what determines immigration is particularly the labor market, much more than migration policies.
Blanca Garcés, senior researcher at the Barcelona Centre for International Affairs. Our thanks to her.
Lorcan, I really like that interview. I think Blanca was probably the perfect person, has like the exact credentials really to speak about this topic with. Now, you asked her a little bit more about why this is happening now. I mean, interestingly, Blanca said that none of us, and I suppose that she's talking about migration experts when she said that, none of them expected it to get approved. So, after all, it started quite long ago, after the pandemic, when it was actually stopped in the Spanish Congress. So, why now?
Yeah, Blanca cited two main factors or reasons. First of all, this is the result of an agreement between the socialists, who are obviously in power in the Spanish government, and Podemos, who are one of these smaller parties that supports the government. So what she was saying is that there's some political external logic to all this. Quite transactional logic is the term that she used. Basically, this isn't just about immigration policy in an isolated sense. It's about politics between these various. Maneuvering. Yeah, it also to facilitate other political decisions that are paralysed. For example, we saw that Podemos labelled another immigration law that's currently going through Congress. They labelled that as racist. So there's a little bit of oiling the wheels, I think is the expression.
A little bit of a back and forth, yeah.
On the other hand, Blanca also said that she believes that the regularisation would not have been possible if Spain was not in a period of economic growth. Spanish economy is growing at a faster rate than other European economies, and employers have also been pushing for this regularisation because there are significant labour shortages in particular economic sectors. Let's listen to an example from December, in fact, before this plan was announced.
Las empresas hoy necesitamos, para ser productivas y ser competitivas, necesitamos de la inmigración.
So that is Josep Sánchez Llibre. He's the president of Foment del Treball, a Catalan business association here. And he's explaining that companies, in order to be productive nowadays, in order to be competitive, companies need immigration the same way people need water to drink and air to breathe every single day.
Now, Cillian, another thing I asked Blanca, which I thought was interesting, is about Spain's kind of distinctiveness or even uniqueness within Europe. And she said that, yes, Spain is a bit of a unique case within Europe when it comes to migration policies, and particularly within the European Union for several reasons.
Yes, exactly. I think one of the main reasons also kind of has a couple of factors within it as well, combining with each other. So first of all, we have to imagine that Spain has something like an open border with the Atlantic. Many people from Latin America can come over to Europe on a holiday visa, and if they're planning on staying here, they just overstay that visa. And why do they come to Spain? Well, because Spain has a common language with the vast majority of Latin America, so many people come to Spain from that continent. And then what's happening from that point on is that Spain has this system of permanent individual regularisation called el arraigo. And this is a relatively straightforward manner of formalising your stay once you're in Spain. We should think about it, the fact that 8 out of 10 irregular migrants living in Spain come from Latin America, and they're generally seen as needed for the economy, needed for the tourism sector, the care sector, the agriculture sector. So there's a couple of factors all interacting with each other that means a lot of people come from Latin America to Spain, and they'll ultimately be able to formalise their stay through various different mechanisms.
Blanca pointed out that in some sense this arraigo that you mentioned, it kind of replaces what she says is a real migration policy. You know, she says Spain does not recruit people at origin. The legal pathways to Spain as an economic migrant is actually quite difficult. So in the end, Spain has quite a laissez-faire policy in the sense that through these regularisation campaigns, Spain and the Spanish government can recognise people that are already living here, already working.
Yeah, precisely. And I think another thing that we need to remember is that Spain is kind of unique in the European context in that migrants can be registered at the municipal level. So even if you don't have the full legal status, anybody living in any part of Spain can register with their local council, and that gives you access to healthcare, to education, just the same way as nationals get.
The regularisation of migrants and immigration in general is also going to have to be an important means of facing future problems of an ageing population. In many developed Western countries, in Catalonia, in Spain, the birth rate is falling.
Yes, exactly. Now, this is a point where we talk about a concept called the age dependency ratio, which sounds riveting, I'm sure. But it is quite important for a lot of developed countries whose population is aging. There's some very serious problems coming down the line for many countries, and immigration is probably the easiest and the quickest way to solve many of these issues. So we have to remember here that the National Statistics Institute of Spain points out that last year, the fertility rate in the country was 1.11. That means that on average, every woman is having, on average, 1.11 births over the course of their lifetime. Countries need an average rate of 2.1 in order to reach what's called the replacement level, the number of births necessary for a population to exactly replace itself. This is all very important. Why? Because a population needs more people contributing to the tax base, contributing to social security, than dependent on it. So if a population has too many retirees, which is going to happen with an aging population, and not enough middle-aged workers, well, then governments are going to be forced to arrange their budgets so that they're spending far more on social care, on hospitals, facilities to take care of the elderly, instead of things like education for the young. Populations need more people of working age to expand the tax base, and immigrants tend to be younger and of working age, which overall just lowers this age dependency ratio.
Yeah. Today, Cillian, we've been talking a lot about undocumented migrants, what they need to do, but we're going to hear now a little bit about what life is like for them, particularly when it comes to the world of work. Alicia Andersson has this report.
Being undocumented in Spain can trap people in a vicious cycle, often pushing them into the so-called informal labor market. But what is informal labor? It is work done off the books, paid in cash, without contracts, and often with serious consequences. We have spoken with several experts on this topic, including Oscar Riu, Secretary of Union Policy at the UGT Trade Union.
Normalment el treball informal és en els sectors més precaris.
Informal work is usually found in the most precarious sectors and therefore among the most vulnerable parts of our society. This is largely because what we refer to as informal work is closely linked to a large group of people, Foreign workers have come to our country seeking a better future because they didn't have decent living conditions in their own countries.
Si han buscat un futur millor.
But in what sectors is this the most common? Here is Fany Raquel Galesas Sánchez, Secretary of Women, Equality and Domestic Workers at the trade union CCOO.
Los sectores en los que más vemos, ¿no?
The sectors where we see the underground economy most active, we will put as number 1, will be domestic and care workers, which is work that takes place inside a home, which is not supervised by labor inspectors because it is extremely difficult to access a private home. Another category we will also consider, which is in second place, will be work in the hospitality industry. People who work in the fields also often picking crops, fruits, strawberries. We often see it in the news too, cases that have come out about women who have also been abused in the fields because they do this type of work, because it is much more difficult for labor inspectors to supervise.
Complicado, ¿no? Poder tener una supervisión.
Nuria Soto, from the organization Riders X Derechos or Riders for Rights.
Hay muchas personas sin documentación.
There are many undocumented people who see delivery platforms as a way to survive. And this works because they have a family member who does have documentation or they pay a commission to the delivery account holder. This is a problem because in the end, what the platforms become is an infrastructure that allows people to survive in exchange for a poor quality of life.
There are reports of salaries as low as €500 per month, 24-hour workdays as workers are constantly on call, unfair dismissals, salaries that are not paid, and no vacation time. But how can this be allowed to continue? Let's listen to Oscar Riu again.
No, si tu no tens papers i estàs treballant aquí.
If you don't have papers and are working illegally, you are in a precarious situation. And when you are precarious, it is very hard to report labor abuses, because you could lose the little income you have.
Perquè saps que pots perdre aquells petits ingressos que tens.
One thing these experts agree on is the need for a stronger labor inspection. According to them, it can take months for an inspector to come and investigate a place that hires informally, if the investigation even happens at all. There just is not enough inspectors to keep up with the pace. According to the Catalonian labor inspection, the latest count for all of Catalonia was 194 investigators. They declined an interview for this podcast.
Thanks very much to Alicia for that report. And that's us for today. Thanks very much for listening and watching.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all our guests, everyone that spoke to us, and thanks to you, Killian, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Lorcan.
Remember, you can subscribe to Filling the Sink wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back again with another episode for you next month. Until then, from all of us here at Catalan News, bye for now. Adeu.